It's a special broadcast that we're bringing to you right here at TT Now. I'm Supriya, Shrinate, and joining me in Mumbai is my colleague Sandeep, Gurumurthi, because it really is a new era at Tata Sons. And Chandrasekaran, the marathon man at TCS, is now the top boss at the Tata Empire, a business house that is looking to start afresh after the ugly boardroom and the courtroom battles with the previous incumbent of the corner office at Bombay House. Chandra, the first non-Parsi to lead the group since its inception, has his task rightly cut out. Top amongst the bets that he will have to do will be to reinstate trust and confidence in the Tata brand, a brand that has been hit hard in the last 6 months.
Discuss all of that and more, and what could Chandra really bring to the table for the Tata Empire, and what are the challenges facing him given that he's moved from a tech background to the helm of an all-encompassing conglomerate like Tata Sons. We're joined by a distinguished panel, former CFO and ED at TCS, S. Mahalingam from Chennai, former CEO of P&G India, noted author Gurcharan from Delhi, Suhel, Seth, managing partner at Counselage India and a good friend of the Tatas, and we're also joined by the president of Nasscom, R. Chandrasekhar. Gentlemen, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us right here on ET Now. R. Chandrasekhar, I'm going to start off with you really, because you've known Chandra for years now. Tell us, what are his key strengths and what does he really bring to the table as the chairman of the Tata Group?
I think Chandra's key strength is in his ability to arrive at a quick decision, taking into account all aspects and dimensions of an issue, and then put across his analysis in a manner which is very convincing, and which also carries along people who have a different view, and I think that contributes immensely to being able to implement these decisions.
Indeed, the ability to work with people and carry people with him is perhaps his big ability. Let's actually speak to Mr. Mahalingam, who's worked with N. Chandrasekaran. And Mr. Mahalingam, let's start with the one thing that many people believe is going to be his big challenge, which is the restoration of credibility, the restoration of confidence as far as the Tata Group, investors, associates, employees are concerned. Do you believe that's going to be the big challenge for N. Chandrasekaran, and is he the right man then to perhaps restore that confidence and also restore credibility?
Yeah, that is correct. Chandra brings a lot of credibility in that aspect. He has looked after all the stakeholders in TCS, whether it is the employees, whether it is the customers, whether it is the shareholders, and so on. And therefore, taking it across the group and ensuring that all the constituents are going to be extremely satisfied is something that he has a background with. Of course, there's a much bigger challenge at this moment in time because it spans across different industries, different geographical areas, and so on. But I'm sure he's up to the challenge.
He's in fact up to the challenge. Let's throw this to Mr. Gurcharan. You've of course led P&G. You've written on corporate India, and this is one boardroom or courtroom battle or one battle within the Tata Empire that rattled a lot of people, and not just about the group, so to say, but India Inc. at large. Do you believe Chandra's elevation in that sense is a big vote also, not just to restore credibility, but a big vote for meritocracy? He's the first non-Parsi to head the Tata Group. He, in some sense, is the outsider who has really got the insider's job, which was considered the insider's job all along.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. This is a very important moment for India Incorporated, and hopefully the beginning of a trend in which we begin to move from familial capitalism to managerial capitalism. This is a transition that many countries have made, beginning principally with the United States, which did it in the early part of the 20th century, where they separated ownership from management, and where they actually, the owners or the founders step back and let professionals take over, not only running the companies, but also the boards. So I personally think this is a very important day for India. And you know, so far, we have an old saying in India, Haveli ki umar 60 saal, meaning the life of a business house is 60 years. And Tatas have defied that law because they are 148 years old. But this last event with Mr. Mistry and Ratan Tata really shook up this thing in the case of the Tatas. And hopefully Mr. Tata has learned his lesson now, and it is that he is not going to look over the shoulder, that he is going to, so he says, he's going to give a free rein to a professional. Now, whether Mr. Chandrasekaran can actually rise to that occasion, because he has created a great company, but to manage a huge conglomerate is a very different challenge.
Sure.
But if he succeeds, it will be a great thing.
Sure. I'm sure Suhel will have a thing or two to say on your comment on whether Mr. Tata will allow him to work independently. I'll come to that in a bit. But Suhel, the broader question is that, you know, if we were doing the show 4 years back on the day Cyrus Mistry took charge, probably the entire panel would be saying roughly the same things. And yet, everything went horribly wrong over the last 4 years. What makes you think that Chandra is fundamentally a different person from what Cyrus Mistry was? Because, you know, Cyrus in many ways was slightly low profile, reticent kind of a person, not seeking the limelight for himself, at least appeared to be. So what makes you think that Chandra is a different person, and what makes you believe that, you know, his equation with Mr. Tata will be great from the point of view of, you know, creating more shareholder value and stakeholder value?
Three or four things, but let me first address a comment of Gurcharan's. You know, it's a myth to say, oh, owners can't be professional and managers are the only professional people. So let's park that. I mean, that's 1965 thinking. I mean, it's utter rubbish to believe that an owner, when he excels, is any less professional in the dispensation of his duties than a so-called professional manager. But I'll park that. To address your question, the difference is that Chandra is a Tata lifer. The difference is that Chandra is seeped and steeped in the value architecture of the House of Tata. Go back, Sandeep, to the program that you created and telecast on October 24, 2016. And if you remember my comments at that time, I said it had nothing perhaps to do with performance as much as it had to do with changing or recalibrating the value architecture of the House of Tata. Chandra is born into that tradition, born into the giving back, born into the manner in which you carry people with you. That's why he'll be great. Number two, he knows how to scale businesses. Look at his initial comments today. His initial comments were, I want to carry every group CEO. Unlike the other gentleman who created a superstructure in the form of a GEC. But I don't want to go back into history because history is a country with no citizens. Number three, I completely disagree, and I want to park this again. Ratan Tata was asked by the board of Tata Sons to step in, and he said, I will step in only for a period of 6 months. He wanted to go the day Chandra was appointed. Chandra requested Mr. Tata to stay on. I think we must be graceful in understanding and acknowledging the role that Ratan Tata had to play in saving the group, in bringing back the group from its bootstraps into the same value prism that the group was formed in and founded for. So, you know, we need to move on. It's very easy to be dismissive. It's very easy to, you know, make headline comments on television programs. But you've got to understand the anguish of a patriarch. You've got to understand the anguish of a man who, like Chandra, spent his entire life in the House of Tata. I think it's a great day to acknowledge the spirit, the tenacity, the loneliness of Ratan Tata. He is, in my mind, still the last man standing. The attacks are vehement, the attacks are malicious, and the attacks are personal. But he hasn't for once shed his dignified silence or shed his dignity.
Right.
I think it's a great day to celebrate both people.
Right.
Ratan Tata on the one hand and N. Chandrasekaran on the other.
Absolutely.
To my mind, there could be no better seamless continuity or the passing of the baton, as has happened this afternoon.
And I don't think anyone is going to dispute the decision that's been taken given the circumstances. I'm coming to you, Gurcharan Das, but let me just ask you this question as well. No one's going to dispute in the circumstances, this was probably the best choice that could have been made, and compliments to the selection committee. Mr. Tata, of course, was a part of it. But the point that Suhel was making on Mr. Tata's presence and his sort of the fact that he's a Tata lifer, he, seeped in the values of the group, etc., etc. Is his presence necessarily a good thing for Chandra, or do you think he should not be more sort of hands-on in any sort of a way? And from Chandra's own point of view, it's better to not have so-called interference. Now, we don't know if there was interference in the case of Cyrus Mistry. It's one person's word against the other. But what is an ideal situation?
No, one minute. I did not say that Mr. Tata will be there. You asked me a pointed question. Why is Chandra best suited? To which my answer was that Chandra is a lifer, much like Mr. Tata was a lifer. Chandra is steeped and seeped in the traditional value architecture of the group. So
right.
Please don't, confuse what I said.
Fair enough.
Very clear articulation of the proposition in answer to your question.
Fair enough. But Gurcharan Das, simple question to you is Mr. Tata's influence on the company will not wane despite Chandrasekaran taking over as a chairman of Tata Sons. Do you think it will wane? If it doesn't wane, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Simple question.
Well, listen, I can't speculate on that. But let me just tell you that I'm staggered by the ignorance of Suhel Seth with regard to economic history. He does not understand how capitalism has evolved in the world. He's talking about some rubbish in 1965. But actually, if you go back to see the history of how familial capitalism has changed to managerial capitalism over history, he will understand that there is a historic movement in this change. And we're not talking whether one owner can be more professional than the other. I would recommend Suhel to read a book by Thomas Mann called Buddenbrooks, which is perhaps the best novel written about business and about family capitalism. And thank you, Suhel. And what I'm trying to say is that book talks about the fact that the first generation of a business family makes money. The second generation of does not want more money. They want something else. So they go for power. And the second generation becomes senators, etc., much as the Kennedys did. The third generation has money and power. They don't want more of that. So they go for art. And in that process, the business goes down the tubes. So the point here is that this is the trap that eventually families must learn to disassociate the family interest from the business interest. And this is why I find this commendable today. And it's commendable today that a true professional has taken over. Not only taken over the management of the business, but the board of the business. And I hope more of this will happen in India in the years to come.
I'm not going to let Suhel and Gurcharan Das spar there, because we have to move the discussion forward. And Mr. Mahalingam, if I may come to you, Cyrus Mistry did raise some points, and that became a part of public discourse on the kind of trusts and governance issues that he spoke about, the maze of trust that Tata operates in. I'm just trying to understand from you, what is the best approach that N. Chandrasekaran needs to have on some of these issues? These issues can't be brushed under the carpet. I mean, yes, there will be people who say they have no standing, and some of them were far-fetched, but those issues were put out in the public domain. The way trusts and listed entities operate, or for that matter, corporate governance issues that were raised by Cyrus Mistry.
There are two things. One is, of course, there are issues that need to be tackled, and many of them are in the, are with the courts and so on, and that will have to be tackled, and there has to be a lot of resource allocation from Tata Sons in terms of dealing with that. So let's leave that aside. The other one is in terms of really looking at the corporate governance practices and so on. And, from a TCS angle, the company that we have both been associated with, Chandra, myself, and which has I would say, set a standard in terms of communicating with shareholders, taking care of the interest of different types of shareholders, the majority as well as the minority shareholders and so on, and ensuring that we run a company with which has the highest forms of governance and so on. I think that's something that will certainly be the background with which Chandra will approach. We need to make sure that everyone, whoever is a stakeholder, gets adequate information, it's transparent, it is, and you take people along. So the issues have really happened where one person has felt that the other person has interfered, or it has not been taken note of and so on. But I think, it's more a way of handling things, more the way of how you're managing it, understanding it from the overall governance purposes. I think that's what Chandra will bring to the table.
All right, Suhel said, I want to throw this one at you. N. Chandrasekaran is known to be a CEO who was obsessed with his company's balance sheet, and which is why TCS is this coveted jewel in the Tata empire, and which is why he perhaps excelled at his job. What should his approach to some of the issues, the legacy issues, like a nano, like the loss-making business of aviation, like loss-making units of steel? What should his approach be? Do you believe he can dispassionately look at those businesses like he did when he was the TCS CEO? Or is this going to be tough because there will be legacy issues that will hover over each one of them?
See, I'm a great believer that this is a call that Chandra will take, and Chandra has a proven track record. No one is going to doubt that. Chandra also recognizes that there are things that can be done without letting egos come in the way. You talked about Nano, you talked about Tata Motors. There was a news article a couple of days ago which mentioned, in a scurrilous manner, that there's an investment, by Mr. Tata in Ola cabs. But the reality is that was made in his private capacity. The board was asked, the Tata Motors board, Ola wanted to buy 150,000 cars, which is 6 months of production. But that hasn't come into the public domain. So the point I'm trying to make is, sometimes when you work in harmony and you understand the culture, you are more effective in making things happen. A. B. True, there are legacy issues. But these legacy issues will be resolved not by proving someone right or by proving someone wrong, but by showing people a roadmap by way of which you can sort these legacy issues out. Third, Chandra is an accomplished manager. He's a proven manager. He also understands that there's a social compact, and I don't mean charity, I don't mean trust, nothing. All I'm saying is Chandra will take a considered view, and Chandra will carry people with him. That, to my mind, is the birthmark of a Tata person. That is the birthmark of a Tata lifer. Will he work towards the balance sheet? Of course he will. Please understand that ultimately even Chandra will be accountable to shareholders and the board. So he's not going to do something which puts him in a strange situation. All I'm saying is, give it time. He has taken over. He's a man with a tremendous track record, a man who from 1987 rose to the highest seat within the House of Tata. I don't think he'll do anything which violates either the principles of shareholder return or, for that matter, the principles or values of the House of Tata.
Gurcharan Das, just to elaborate on the point that Mr. Mahalingam was also making on the governance structure. Now, the Tata Group has a sort of slightly peculiar governance structure because it's majority owned by the Tata Trusts, which do, some phenomenal corporate social, CSR work, and one can't take that away. But the fact is that, what must be the extent of control that the trusts should have on the operations of group companies which are governed by individual boards that have individual people as chairman? That's a bit of a grey area. How do you expect Chandra to navigate that? Because that's where the whole issue of control will come in. And one of the key reasons why this conflict happened with Cyrus Mistry was because he was not okay with the extent of control that the trusts had in the operations of some of these companies. What's the best way of navigating this?
Well, this is a complex question, and I share with Suhel's enthusiasm about Chandra, and I think a man who is a Tata lifer, as he says, will have the sensitivity to work. It's again an issue of ownership. Those Tata trusts actually are the owners, and I think that what he certainly he has a better chance than almost anyone of navigating this difficult area of the trust ownership of a company. I mean, this will require both sides, you know, a sense of decorum that was always there. Only in the last few months, I mean the last 6 months, did it come out, and it should not have come out in this way that it did. But the harder question for Chandra really will be the difficult business decisions of divesting the businesses that are losing money, that are bleeding Tatas. The telecom issue, the Docomo issue, these are the tough areas, and I think once he builds a track record of sorting these things out, I think he'll have the confidence, of everybody's confidence to move on. So I personally think the governance issue will not be the critical one. The real issues are the business issues now with the Tatas.
Right. I'm just going to take this forward, and
Sandeep,
Mr.
if I may, I just
R.
want to make a
Chandrasekhar,
quick point
Chandra is
here.
an out-and-out software man. I'll come to you, but I'll come to you, Suhel, in just a bit. But I do want to take this and put it on record. Chandra is an out-and-out software man. How big a challenge will it be for him to lead a group as diversified as the Tatas? I mean, you know, I know it sounds cliched. I could be killed for sounding repetitive, but from salt to software, yes, but there's a lot in between. Is that going to be a big challenge as well?
I think that Chandra himself, in his typically modest way, has said that he will learn and he will grow into the job. But I think that there is more to it than that. Number one is the fact that you do not get ready-made leaders who have experience across such a diverse set of industries. Whoever you get will have experience in some areas, will need to learn in respect of some other areas. But today, given the kind of work that the IT industry does, given the fact that it is today transforming businesses across the board, the kind of experience, knowledge and expertise which you gain by leading a large IT services organization like the TCS would have given a much wider and deeper exposure to many businesses across different sectors, and also to the kind of transitions that they are undergoing. So today we are in an age where not only is technology getting embedded in business, it's a moot point where the businesses are also getting embedded on technology. So in that milieu, I think somebody who has a diverse technology background across sectors does have many advantages over somebody who has a narrower area of focus.
You know, Mr. Mahalingam, we've had so much debate within our own newsroom on this. Can Chandra, who really took TCS to where it is, and he's synonymous with TCS, can he really be hands-off as far as, TCS per se is concerned? Or is he going to be somebody who's always going to have a finger in the Tata consultancy pie always?
First I want to just add to what Chandrasekhar said, and I'll come to this point with regard to TCS. Chandra has essentially, when he became the CEO of TCS, from what he was doing earlier, which was essentially in terms of managing projects, managing certain areas and so on, he grew to that leadership position. When you become the CEO, you are looking at many things. You are not just focusing on one area of business or one customer or multiple customers and so on, but really trying to create new businesses, taking TCS to different areas and so on. So it's a function that he grew into, and he did it extremely well and so on. So now Tata Sons is a different one, because it's in multiple industries. There is a portfolio management business, because essentially it's a portfolio, and the portfolio has to deliver returns. It is also the question of, as he defined today, providing leadership in each of the areas that Tatas are engaged in and so on. And that is another, of course, he has to take certain decisions, helped of course by the management of companies and so on. There might be right decisions, wrong decisions, but he'll try to make sure that every decision that is taken is efficiently executed and so on. So that is the overall framework, and I'm sure he will move into this job as he moved it earlier to the job of a CEO. The second, the question that you asked in terms of can he essentially adopt a hands-off policy with regard to TCS, TCS is in some sense, one of the best performing companies in the group, certainly. I mean, people talk about Tata Motors and TCS and so on. So these are, and therefore, I think if he has to really perform his job very well, he has to ensure that TCS continues to deliver the kind of output, that deliver the kind of returns that it is doing. And he has been a very important part of TCS for the last so many years and so on. And therefore, I wouldn't call it interference, because Rajesh Gopinathan, who has essentially taken over, and NGS, who has taken over the Chief Operating Officer and so on, he has worked very closely with them. I don't think he'll have the time to get into, nitty-gritty and look over their shoulders and so on. But he was someone with a basic understanding of the business, who is really going to ensure that TCS business as such goes forward. There is no discontinuity there. He will be there to provide all the help. I'm sure, as I look at it, as he understands the business, it will be a little more than what he does with other group companies, but it is essential that he continues to focus a little more as far as TCS is concerned, because it is the one that essentially delivering the highest return within the group.
One wonders what is more tough to imagine, TCS without Chandra or Chandra without TCS. Let's say both both is not going to happen. But closing comments, Suhel said, I'm going to throw it to you. He has to also take a lot of, and we haven't got down to specifics because it's the first day and I don't think we should bombard Chandra with specifics. But, he's got to take a lot of tricky decisions. For example, settling the Docomo issue. For example, the call on selling European assets of Tata Steel. What do you think, how is he going to take these tricky decisions? Is he going to sort of lean on Mr. Tata to seek his advice, which probably might be the right thing to do, or will he sort of take them as a ruthless business professional? How do you expect him to take these tricky decisions?
But I think you've put it really well. This constant debate on television, it's not Ratan Tata versus Chandra. They both have the same avowed objective, to keep the value architecture of the House of Tata intact and to make sure that the House of Tata is profitable and creates shareholder value. Number one. Number two, Mr. Mahalingam very rightly said, if TCS is the crown jewel, why would I not, also take a keen interest in it? It would be fitting for me to take a keen interest in companies that are in trouble, as also companies that are doing really well. Having said that, look at Chandra's character. He's a marathon man. He doesn't do sprints. Sprints are for people who don't want to take risks, and sprints are for people who want a shortcut. Number two, Chandra's integrity is above reproach. Chandra's experience, his way of scaling up businesses is established. The fact that Chandra and Mr. Tata worked together when Mr. Tata was chairman TCS and Chandra was CEO establishes the harmony in the partnership. I'm saying, for God's sake, look at the silver lining in the cloud rather than the dark lining in a silver cloud. I think it's a great day for corporate India. It's a great day for the House of Tata. I don't see conflict. I see harmony. I don't see people at the crossroads. I see people holding hands together and actually crossing that Rubicon. For me personally, as someone who started his advertising career in the House of Tata, this is the House of Tata version 2.0, which we need to celebrate rather than pin pricks or, worry about what will happen. Remember, the House of Tata is in very safe hands. The experience, the sagacity of Ratan Tata, the enterprise, the proven ability, and the marathon capabilities of Chandra. Never was a marriage more fruitful, more made for each other. I'm an eternal optimist. I think there is no milestone that the House of Tata cannot cross if this partnership prospers, as I'm sure it will.
Suhel, I agree with much of what you said, which is why we are calling it Chandrayan at Tatas. We were sort of debating what to call this event that's happened today. We're calling it Chandrayan at Tatas because we think it's historical in more ways than one. But Gurcharan Das, I'll let you have the last word, and I want to go back to my sort of skeptical journalist instincts take over in such situations, and I want to go back to what I started off with, which is that if we had done this show 4 years back,
you also become an optimist. You'll sleep better.
I hope to be one, but which is that if we'd done this show 4 years back, chances are that Suhel would have come and probably said same things to Cyrus Mistry as well. So let me throw it to you. The one piece of advice that you'd like to give,
I wouldn't have.
The one piece of advice that you'd like to give to N. Chandrasekaran as he embarks on what is without a doubt the marathon of his life.
Quite right. And I agree with Suhel that the issue now going forward is not the conflict issue, nor is it the governance issue. It is really the issue of the very tough problems that the Tata Group has. And this will require a marathon runner. It will require a person with his own mind as well. A good leader listens, but then leads from the front. So let's hope that everything will work out well, and it should. But to have done what he achieved in TCS, which was terrific, does not necessarily mean that you can take on the problems of a difficult conglomerate and make them succeed. It requires other skills as well, and it's quite possible that he will imbibe those skills, that he has the right instincts to grow. But it is a different job that he's taking on, and he's taking on some very difficult problems.
Indeed, difficult problems, but he's a marathon runner, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that may this shining example of meritocracy really succeed at the House of the Tatas. But we really appreciate Mr. Gurcharan Das, Mr. Mahalingam, Mr. Suhel, Seth, and of course Mr. R. Chandrasekhar for taking time out this evening and joining us on this very special edition. Chandrayan at the Tata Group is what we're calling it. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Keep it with ET Now.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.